Hey everybody, Mark here, reliving the American Revolution. And I know yesterday I said I was going to get us out of the South, but you know, we got one guy that I haven't talked about yet, and this guy is just spectacular. His name's Francis Marion, and you probably all know him by his nickname, the Swamp Fox. Marion was an interesting man. As a young boy, age 15, he left his home and signed on to a merchant ship. A week out at sea, and it sank. He spent another week or two in a lifeboat, got back to shore, and swore he'd never go to sea again. Good thinking. So as a young man, about 24, he joined the Continental Army as it was, the British side. It wasn't Continental Army, it was joined the British side in the French and Indian War. And that's where he learned some of his fighting tactics, by watching the Indians on both sides and getting away from this historical line kind of fighting and getting into the behind the tree fighting. So he finished up there, and he had a plantation in South Carolina, and he was involved in the South Carolina militia. He served at the first battle of Charleston under General Moultrie, and then later on he served on his own in the South Carolina militia. He was at Charleston. He and his regiment were at Charleston for the second battle of Charleston, in which they lost. Unfortunately, he fell and broke his ankle and was out of Charleston the week before and wasn't captured. And that was a huge capture by Clinton and Cornwallis both. And that started the whole battle scene that we had talked about the last 4 or 5 days. So he was at the Battle of Camden, where we again lost. General Gates had him there, and Gates lost. So Francis Marion decided that he was going to fight his kind of war that he liked. And so he gathered up anybody that would come with him. And at any time, he'd have 20 guys, he'd have 100 guys, he'd have 150 guys. And he started this group called Marion's Men, and these guys were all militia type guys. They didn't get paid. They provided their own firearms, their own ammo, their own food, brought their own horses. And these guys were masters in guerrilla tactics. And what I mean by that is, we've talked about it several times, Francis Marion's men would fight from behind trees, rocks, fields where you couldn't see them, all kinds of stuff. And their goal was never to win a battle. Their goal was to simply slow the advancing British troops down. It was never to go one-on-one. They were always outnumbered. I mean, when you have 50 guys and you're going up against 500, you don't want to do that. But his tactics were phenomenal in slowing down the British and diverting them and causing them problems and taking their stores. They would rob their wagons from the back of the wagons. Were always in the back. The soldiers marched in the front and the wagons were in the back. They would take the wagons. So it was an interesting battle, and at one point he was the only one in North and South Carolina that was doing any fighting against the British. And Cornwallis finally got tired of all this, and he sent Tarleton with his light brigade, we know about Tarleton, to go find Francis Marion. And so they were chasing Marion. Marion decides to run through the swamps that he knows about. And after 26 miles of running through the swamps of South Carolina, Tarleton gives up and says that the old Swamp Fox can just go on. And if the devil wants to chase him, he can chase him, but he will never catch him. And that's where the name Swamp Fox came from. It was given to him by his enemy, Colonel Tarleton. And they would do battle once in a while, but not very often. And Francis Marion proceeded on. Now, he was by no means a angel. He at times could be a brutal man, and he believed that brutality by the British would be responded by brutality. And he hung people, he shot people, and that's the way that he did business. But his men followed him; they were loyal to him to the end. So, you know, we often see, recently there was the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, totally supposed to be Francis Marion, but, you know, not accurate at all. You know, some of the stuff is, maybe close, but Francis Marion was not married, didn't marry until after the war, didn't have any children at all, wasn't the good guy that Mel Gibson made Francis Marion out to be. But there's a lot of different stories and stuff about Francis Marion. One of the very good books that I've read is by John Oler. It's called The Swamp Fox. Very accurate, very articulate in how he lays it out. Excellent reading if you want to read about Francis Marion. I encourage you to pick it up and read it. I buzzed through it in just a couple days. It was so good. And for me, that's pretty remarkable to buzz through a book in a couple days. Francis Marion was also, he was considered one of the founding fathers of the modern day Army's Green Berets because of his techniques and his methods for fighting. He served, after the war, he married, and he served in the South Carolina State Senate for a number of terms, and then he finally retired, and he died at the age of 63 years. And so there you go. Francis Marion, colorful guy, good guy, and probably did his fair share to save the American side of the Revolutionary War. Have a good one.